Welcome to Diversity Conversations, where we engage in thought-provoking dialogue to identify leadership solutions to today's most challenging conflicts. Stream live each week, Saturday 9:30 a.m. to 11 a.m. Hosted by Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Strategist and CEOs Eric Ellis and Tommie Lewis. Join us and add your voice to this engaging diversity conversation.
Good morning, Greater Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, the United States, and the world. My name is Eric Ellis, and I'm the president and CEO of Integrity Development Corporation. And I'm joined this morning by my good friend and brother,
Tommie Lewis, president and CEO of Make It Plain Consulting. Good morning, Eric.
Good morning, T. What's up, baby?
Hey, nothing much, man. It's a good day. It's a beautiful day.
Yes, sir. Yes,
Sunny,
sir.
bright,
Yes,
crisp
sir.
in the air.
Yeah.
It's a great day. It's a great day.
That's right. And we about to play some golf today, ain't we, Tom?
Yes, sir.
That's right.
So it makes it a better day.
That's right. We
Right.
about to do it. All the work we've been putting in, we about to go out here in this scramble and get first place. That's what our coach told us, is first place. And if not, we're going to go social.
Yes,
And have a lot of fun. Either way, we're going to win today.
Yes, sir.
Tell me, how was your week, man?
Eric, my week was fantastic. I do have to give some shout outs.
Okay.
Got to give a shout out to our client, Durango School District 9R out in Durango, Colorado. They are doing phenomenal work
Excellent.
in engaging the students, the staff, the community members to make sure that all, capital A, capital L, capital L, all students are seen and valued and embraced. Regardless of where they are from pre-K to graduates, they're creating and sustaining that portrait of a graduate and what that person looks like as they move into either higher education, enrollment, if they move into enlistment, into the armed services, or employment, whatever the case may be. Durango School District 9R is the gold standard for any school district throughout the U.S. to say, if we're really student focused, student centered, or people centered, that's the gold standard.
Okay.
Right.
Okay, Tommy.
I also have to give a shout out to another client of ours, Encircle. We have a number of clients, and so pardon all of our partners and clients that I may not mention, just mentioning two. Have to give a shout out to Encircle.
Okay.
Encircle is out of Virginia, i.e. West Virginia as well. They care for our citizens who have developmental disabilities. So these are the schools that educate our citizens. These are the support services and wraparound services for the families that may have a family member that has developmental disabilities. And we have a partner organization here in Cincinnati, St. Joseph Home, that does the same thing. They're a client of ours. And I want to say thank you to these organizations, because oftentimes, Eric, these are human beings, citizens who are less heard. They don't have a voice. In some cases, they are inaudible. So they do not speak.
Right.
But I am very much committed, as these organizations are, to say that these are all human beings and should be given all of the human rights that we as able-bodied folks have.
Right.
So let us not diminish or minimize those folks that are not seen. They're present, not heard. They're speaking in different ways. And so that when we are really about equity, really about dismantling illegal discrimination, Eric, that we keep these folks in mind.
Right.
These folks are our folks. I want to say big shout outs to the organizations that have doubled and tripled down
That's right.
on taking care of and servicing folks like us. That's how my week has been. Just picked up the board from college, drove from North Carolina A&T, Greensboro to Cincinnati. Had some good times with him until he fell asleep. Right. He had his final exam yesterday, so I get it.
Right.
But I'm very happy to see Bryce home with us for a little bit this summer.
That's good on both those fronts, Tommie. Tommie, our work and our clients make us better people, don't they?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, because as I watch you just talk about them, they're not just any old regular old clients. They're people that you're working with to transform the communities that they're part of. You and I are not just trying to inspire others; we're being inspired by those that we work with, and it reminds us of how grateful we are as people. But it also allows us to recognize that DEI must survive in some form, no matter what. And that's going to be the topic that we talk about. Tommie, this was a good week for me. I had a chance to work with a new client, 1440 Foods, and just inspired by their enthusiasm to get their leaders on board with the competencies necessary to be effective leaders. They're building a new plan out. And so they're going through the 5 essential leadership competencies, empathic leadership, psychological safety, unconscious bias, sense of belonging, inclusive leadership. And so I'm grateful to that they're continuing that work and being very transparent around things that they need to work on. So that's always positive. And then my staff, Suzanne Collins, was in town this last week. Her and her husband, LG Wise, they were with us, and powerful time. Wise had talked about when he was here, he had a chance to speak at Solid Rock Church on Wednesday night and share some real prophetic insights with them. And then he and I were talking, and he was talking about something that he wanted us to do. And I think I shared that with you, Tommie, just really almost like a worship kind of service that's not in a church necessarily, but that looks at bringing communities together culturally and inviting the presence of God to be a part of that.
Yes.
And really wanting to look at the Native American community as being sort of the original sin in this country, the exclusion, the marginalization of Native Americans, and really allowing that to lead the rest of us into forgiveness and healing around this kind of thing. And so I'm excited about that and challenged by it as well, because when you feel the anointing of God on something, it's kind of scary because you don't know where it will go, but you know that the environment is right. And I hear God saying, give me a chance in this time. And I think that that's what DEI has always been about. People saying, give me a chance. And I think Christ is calling for that as well. And we got to make that, you and I certainly do make that center in our lives and our work.
Yeah, Eric, thank you for sharing that too. And as you were speaking, it reminded me, particularly with our indigenous or Native Americans, the work that we're doing in Colorado, I have been doing for about 4 years, has been eye-opening to me because here in the Midwest, unfortunately, because of the original sin, as you mentioned, there aren't many indigenous tribes in the Midwest, be it Ohio, yes, Michigan, Illinois, Kentucky, Tennessee, etc. There's almost been an extinction of our people.
Right.
But out in Colorado, prevalent.
Right.
Right. And so there was some learning that I had to embrace with regards to, in closing, the names of indigenous tribes, Native Americans, in the history books are very different than the actual names of the tribes. Right? So like Navajo, they're not Navajo. They've embraced it because they've been misnamed,
right? But
they're not. They have a different name. And I'm like, wow, I never knew. And so I think that, Eric, sometimes if we want the best and most accurate information, we have to go to the source.
We got to go to the source and hold on to your hats, community, that what this means is that each of us has to embrace being lifelong learners. We're never going to have this all down. We're always going to have a need to grow and to learn. We're going to make mistakes. That's okay. But we can never give up on the process of learning. And so as we look at sort of why must DEI survive in some form. The first point that I want to make is that bias is a human condition. And so no matter what, from our birth almost to our grave, all of us as people are going to have biases, whether they're conscious or unconscious. And so the only question is not whether we have biases or not, it's whether we're working on them or not. Tommie, what are some of the negative impacts in the workplace of some of our biases?
Well, there's a number of things, Eric, that can be negative and then also positive, but you're speaking about the negative. So what I have seen in the workplace is that a bias of the halo bias or the horns bias. The halo bias is where a person may do or say something that one feels is positive, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so if someone is engaging with me and what they're saying or doing is positive in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
I attach that to any other positive attributes that I've seen in someone else.
Mm-hmm.
So I take that positivity and I put a halo around that person. Although they've only done one thing that's good,
Right.
I believe my bias is they can do no wrong.
Right.
So then when there may be a complaint or a grievance or disagreement with that person, no, Eric wouldn't say that.
Right.
I know Eric, let me adjust his halo.
Right.
He wouldn't do that.
Right.
And so in fact, you're talking about, Eric is kind of low in the competency in this area, needs some development. I don't see that. Right. What I see is a promotion.
Right.
So because I'm in power, I'm going to promote Eric on the halo bias. Right. The horns bias is the opposite, where a person is behaving or speaking in a way that I perceive as negative.
Mm-hmm.
And I attach that same feeling to other experiences where it's been negative.
Right.
So although you, Eric, you've made one mistake or you said something I didn't agree with one time.
Right.
I don't trust you. I think that anything that people may say about you that is positive, I put the horns bias on you to say, oh, that's an anomaly, right? That's not sustainable.
Right.
20 people out of 21 people say Eric is the best choice to move forward. I say, well, 18 years ago and 3 months and 5 days ago, when Eric questioned me during that meeting, I didn't like being challenged. So now that we're 18 years later,
he's still got them horns.
He's still got those horns and he's not there. So I've seen that, Eric. I know I stretched that out, but it's around kind of promotion, opportunity, access, and bias could get in our way of clear and accurate judgment of another person, event, or thing.
Thank you. Mark Lane, glad to have you with us this morning.
Hey,
community,
Mark.
Man, we love having you all join us. Tommie and I have prepared some things, community, for you this morning. Lydia, if you'll bring up our slides. We wanted to just talk a little bit about unconscious bias. Beliefs or attitudes that are activated automatically. They operate outside of our conscious awareness and affect our understanding, actions, and decisions in ways that often contradict our stated values and beliefs. So that's the crazy part about unconscious biases, is that they're happening outside of our conscious sort of understanding and yet affecting decisions that we make. The sort of three reasons why unconscious biases happen. Number one, when there's an information overload. Our brains receive 11 million bits of information, Tommie, every second, and they can only handle 40 to 50 bits consciously. So the rest of that is going into filing systems and still operating us. Secondly, when we're under pressure to act quickly, then we go right to the first thing that's in there, the quickest things that are available to us. And our brain creates these mental shortcuts so that it can navigate through the day without having to weigh into those 11 million bits of information. Tommie, the notion of unconscious bias has now been in the workplace for maybe a decade or so. And people have been fascinated with it. Some are very much, they embrace it because they say, oh, I knew that I was a good person, but unconsciously, maybe I have some biases. What are you seeing about the use? What do you see as the value of unconscious bias?
Yeah, again, you keep mentioning that everyone has bias, Eric, and I believe it's true. And I'm seeing that in the workplace, particularly in the human resources or human capital space, is that companies are run by people, are led by people. The workers are people. In some cases, there's automation, but in most cases, it's people.
Right.
And so people are flawed.
That's right.
We have our biases. And what I've been seeing, Eric, is kind of twofold. Either organizations are truly understanding the barriers or benefits of bias, those shortcuts. Sometimes shortcuts are good, right? Whereby we do not have to be captured in paralysis analysis by not receiving all of the 100% of information that we may never get. But we have to make a decision.
Right.
And so there is an advantage to having some shortcut. Let's get to the point, cut to the chase.
Right.
I've also seen, Eric, where organizations, they question the reality of bias. They say, yeah, we all have biases, but
we don't act on them.
We don't act on them, not us.
Right.
So what to do? So they literally ask, what do we do when we find out our biases?
Right.
Again, what we do, what I say is, you tell me, what do you do?
Right.
And then once they have comfort, Eric, and they start speaking, they tell us what they really do.
Absolutely.
Right.
Oh,
we mentioned earlier very quickly.
Yeah.
Resumes. Get the resumes. Right. You have a job posting, and we have a job posting and Make It Plain right now. We're getting some 15 to 20 resumes easily a day.
Right.
That resume comes across, and we have a name that's less familiar.
Right.
Maybe even difficult to pronounce.
Right.
And that bias is put on the side. In some cases, crumbled up. File 13.
Right.
We may be the bias may be getting us in a position to throw away the best talent.
Right.
There you go.
That's exactly right.
That's what's been happening. Because of my own bias as an individual, that's what happens. When we move into a group discussion, that may free up some bias or negative impact, but then we also may have groupthink, that if everyone around the table thinks the same, right? We kind of affirmation bias, confirmation bias, right? You think that, Eric? Yeah, I concur.
Right.
So that's what's happening.
So let's bring that back up, Lydia. And so if we go to the next slide, you'll see some data, I think here, research around hiring decisions. Yale University study looked at identical resumes submitted with only the names changed for gender. And they sort of rated male named applicants as significantly more competent and hireable than identically qualified female named applicants. Additionally, male applicants were offered higher starting salaries and more career mentoring opportunities. And so we see these biases in the workplace and in studies that are done around human behavior. If we look at performance evaluations, a study was done in 2019 that revealed that 96% of employees believe management bias affects performance review scoring, indicating a widespread perception that there is bias in evaluations. Tommie, that's a big one for me.
Yeah.
I believe that the reason why there is so much bias in performance evaluations is because there's too much subjectivity there. I call it, sort of a supervisor sitting down on Monday Night Football and spitballing it. Yeah. Just 3, 3, 3, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 3. Come on now. We literally just drawing out of the sky, man, subjective judgments around people. I think we're ever going to deal with and we're going to show you 9 different kinds of biases in just a minute. But if we don't really begin to address those, we really aren't going to have fairness in our performance evaluations.
Eric, I have a quick comment and then a question.
Okay.
My first comment is that for myself, I'm named after my father's namesake, Tommie, Tommie. Last name Lewis, Lewis, Jr., right? I have a middle initial as well. I have found myself in doing my own social experiments that I have submitted resumes or any application with Tom Lewis. And I've gotten responses from folks, right? Even in the phone interview, may I speak to Tom Lewis? This is he. Yeah, Tom, just got your application, your resume, right? Exciting, excellent work. So you've attended and graduated from 5 different institutions, one of which was international. Yes, the University of Rome in Italy. How was that? It was outstanding, outstanding, right? And then, so talk to you.
He's bilingual.
So to bring up, talk to us about it. I started to go through some things, and is Tom short for Thomas? No, actually, my real name is Tommie, with the IE. Oh, well, and then there's something that comes out of that, right? Right. My question to you is, what advice would you offer to someone, particularly in the workplace, who acknowledges that they have been subjugated to bias, whereby it is prohibiting their advancement, or even productivity, or even social, emotional, and psychological safety, where they're just literally bound and constricted by the reality, not a perception, but the reality that someone else's bias is landing on them, and they're unable to safely navigate those workplace waters?
That's a great question, Tommy. And first of all, I want to take a moment to respect people and to shout out some empathy toward people who feel trapped, who don't believe that there are options available for them to sort of move on. You and I are entrepreneurs, we're free guys. And so a lot of times, unfortunately, our advice may come from a place of freedom and confidence. I find that people that have been working at a place for a while now, they've got a pension that they're trying to hold on to, they oftentimes feel trapped. I would say that you got to, first of all, take full inventory on what are the resources that are available for you within the organization. So you want to talk to your manager if you think that that's wise or possible. If you can't talk to your manager, then you want to go to HR and you want to, see what kind of opportunities and support systems are there for you. If you're not a person that is trapped because of pensions and things like that, Tommy, I think that you have to give strong consideration to the fact of, is this the right section in this company? Is there someplace else I can go? Or is this the right place for me?
Yes, sir.
Because at the end of the day, this is what I think is going to change corporations, is this generation that's coming along right now.
Okay.
I love the generation that's coming along right now. You know why? Because they don't care. They say, if you're not going to treat me fairly, I'm out. I'm straight deuces. I ain't even giving 2 weeks notice. Yeah. Where you have the next job lined up? No. What are you going to do? Well, I'm going back home to my parents' basement. I mean, they don't care. And so they are going to put pressure on organizations. And now that we're beginning to push out all of our immigrants and undocumented workers, we're going to have a whole lot of jobs that are going to be available to a whole lot of people that are going to have power to decide if they're going to stay there.
Yeah, that's good advice. That's good advice. And I also want to lean to our community for their thoughts and insights.
Absolutely.
Right? Because this happens in the workplace. It happens in society where there's a lot of bias, things like that. And again, bias is not always negative. Oftentimes it is, but it's not always negative. I gravitate to people that I am more comfortable with, right? I consider you, Eric, my brother, because of certain similar characteristics, values,
right?
Things like that. If we were polar opposites, full transparency, I don't know if we will be
Oh,
chopping it
no.
up.
Right.
That goes
right,
for anyone.
Right.
There's,
right.
yeah, just,
exactly. Right.
Hey, I'm not into. Hey, man, let's get together, see if we can meet, try to put together this big scheme to do what? To rob a couple of banks. Oh, nah, brother, I'm good.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's the friend group. Yeah, that's what we do. We rob banks. No, I don't rob, steal, or kill.
Right.
Right. So what? I'm not making fun of that because I think that there are some well-intended good people that get usurped by bias of other people, that they don't really believe that these other people are bad, right? But because you have a charismatic leader or a persuasive viewpoint, that folks fall back into fear, right? And say, you know, I can't speak up against that. I just have to agree with it because I have to save my own neck, right? That's what's happening in the world. That's what happens in the workplace.
I'm gonna pivot for just a second because Tommie, I'm coming right to what you're just saying right here.
Yeah.
And then I'm gonna come back to this bias conversation and I'll pull up the 3 categories. We'll talk about that. But I had a dream last night. I don't know why God has got me dreaming so much, Tommie. I told Tommie about one of my dreams. It was about the golf swing and God. But I'll come back to that too. But the dream I want to talk about is I had a dream last night that my son was running away. He's got friends that are Palestinian, and they were almost at war, literal war with the Jewish community. And so my son was now running, and there was shooting going on. And I somehow came into a scene, and I saw people chasing my son to kill him. And so I called up one of my Jewish friends, and I said, we've got to stop this madness and not allow this to sort of just overcome our young people in the next generation. And I'll tell you, Tommie, what I think I got out of that dream was that it may not be possible for all of us to just stand down and not concern ourselves with what's happening between Palestinians and Jewish people over in the Middle East or even in this country. That at some point, Tommie, it's going to consume us and the ones that we love. And I remember being in such deep fear that my son could lose his life because of his friendships. And now all of a sudden, something that I thought I was just a bystander at, I've now become inserted into it because of something of mine that matters.
Wow.
Tommie, I don't know what well, I do know what part of the lesson is, but what are your thoughts about that dream and then about this notion of us not being disconnected to things that it looks like?
Opportunity there. What I think is that you're reflecting and analyzing the dream is a process in and of itself. I don't know exactly, Eric, what it says, but I do know it's saying something to either your psyche, your mindset, mentality, or your spirit. So if there was an action step, I would have a conversation with your son.
Oh, that's what I did.
Oh, okay.
That's exactly what I did. I haven't talked to him yet, but I already text both of them.
Yeah.
And I said, look, be mindful of this, be watchful, and don't put yourself in situations where violence can come upon you. I just think that, Tommie, it's disappointing to me that and so I started thinking, forgive me, community, I got no agenda here. But I started thinking about how the harm that's happening to Jewish students on college campuses is being politically, in some ways, manipulated in order to create wedges. And I had a question in my mind that says, are the people that are supposedly fighting for you, in fact, fighting for you? Or are you just a pawn in somebody else's game? And so, what I'll say to you all, community, is that we have an obligation to care deeply about each other. I think that we have to be careful not to divest ourselves from this notion of coming together and building common ground. The reason why Tommie and I are talking about DEI must survive in some form is because we know that it attached in it is civility. Attached in it is unity, is empathy, is caring for one another. And so I cannot stand by comfortably and watch what's happening in the Middle East. And so I got up out of the dream and I did a lot more study about Palestine, the POL, and then I started looking at the Palestinian Authority and how are young people feeling today who are Palestinian. Well, they don't really have as much respect for the Palestinian Authority because they see them as older and almost colluding with Israel a bit. And so they're almost beginning to lean more towards a Hamas because they feel like we are being harmed and nobody is fighting for us. Man, that's complex, Tommie.
It is.
And I would say that we have got to find ourselves fighting for the innocent on all sides, and don't just land on one side, but understand the complexity of these issues so that we might partner with people to build common ground, unity, and the capacity to love one another.
I think this is a great segue into our discussion around bias. As we are listening to Eric and I, share our comments, and again, inviting the community, part of the learning is to check your own bias.
Yep, that's right.
So as you were speaking, Eric, I too was checking my bias.
Okay.
Whatever it was, right? If it was on one side or the other, maybe.
That's right.
If it was the topic itself,
that's
maybe.
Right. That's right.
If it was my proximity to someone who may be in closer proximity to another person on one side or the other, like you said, I had to check my bias and stay in the conversation.
Right.
So part of one of unconscious bias or implicit bias is understanding that we have them, being aware of what those biases are, maybe even the backdrop, the background of it, and then the action. In my instance, my action was to hold on, continue to listen. Don't jump to the conclusion. Don't judge. Right. And then turn it on me. How much do you really know about it? And I said to myself, as you were speaking, I don't know a lot about it. I'm listening.
Right.
Yeah. That's when we eliminate that shortcut that may, in some cases, lead to a mistake.
Right.
Say something that we can't pull back, Eric.
Right.
Do something that we can't undo.
That's right.
That's where we are, community.
Let's bring up our slides again. Wade, good to see you. So glad to have so many of our friends involved with us. Absolutely. Let's go to the next slide. And this next one really pulls up the three categories of bias. There are three categories of bias, at least in what I've put together. 1,000 people give you 1,000 different things. Tommie and I have put together this notion that there are three categories. There are decision-making biases, how we judge data and make choices. There are social biases, how we see and treat other people. And then there are memory and perception biases, how we judge data and make choices. Tommie already mentioned a few of these. Under decision-making bias, there's confirmation bias, seeking confirming evidence. Tommie, you want to say anything more about sort of these decision-making biases?
Yeah, decision-making biases, again, those shortcuts with limited or maybe even inaccurate data that, our biases maybe, we've seen this before, we've seen this problem, we've seen this answer from the past, and now that you're presenting the answer that we've seen before, let's go with that. That's not always the case. the problems that we have seen today may be similar, but not exactly the same of the problem of yesteryear, right? So we can say something like, oh, we've seen poverty before.
Right.
Back in 1935, we did see poverty. But in 2025, poverty may look differently. Poverty may be just one check away. It may be a fire in a home. It may be a stolen identity.
Right. Broke.
You broke
in
your
poverty.
Right? Because some of us don't have an extra $100,000 in cash in the bank.
Right.
We may be check to check.
Right.
In 1935, the poverty looked like person in the trench coat, top hat, tin cup in the soup line, getting some soup and a piece of bread. It looked like a dust bowl that's overcoming the wastelands, if you will, and these folks covering their windows with sheets, right, and coughing into handkerchiefs, because that's what poverty looked like. Poverty looked like sometimes our bias connected it to a particular race or ethnicity. Right. So poverty looks like those folks in that urban development called the ghetto, the projects. That's what the perception of poverty was. I put perception in quotes because everyone in the projects is not impoverished. Right. We want to be clear about that. Very, very clear. So some of us just connect poverty to economic status. It's not always the case. I know several people who are financially stable, but spiritually poor. Right. And I'm not passing judgment at all. And it may sound like that, good people, but I'm not. Because I've been working on myself too, where I caught myself feeling holier than thou or bigger than thou. And sometimes with my success, I'm like, I got this. I want it. And other people said, no, it's the we. You didn't get there by yourself, brother. And I had to check myself or get checked. So what I'm saying is that when we look at poverty, it's not always the case that our bias, our lens that we see other people may be smudged. It may be colored with something different than clear, right? So let's do that. Let's
bring those back up, Lydia.
Yeah, and as you bring it back up real quick, shout out again to Wade. He had a question there, Eric. I don't know if we want to address that or come back to it a little bit later.
So I would say that
the question real quick, so those who are listening, right? What is the underlying issue in the Middle East?
Right. So I think that there are people that have been fighting for a land for a long time. Wade, that's really what's at odds here. Right now, what's happening is that Hamas, sort of on October 7th, raided a village and a concert, killed a lot of people, 1,200 people, took over 200 Israelis hostage, and just did all kind of manner of evil things to them. And so in response to that, Israel's fighting back. They are looking for Hamas, and Hamas was hiding underneath sort of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. And so the Israelis say after a while, I got to bomb you. I can't worry about where you are now, because you'll do something treacherous and then you'll hide underneath the people. Well, that's over. We can't keep allowing that. So then they started bombing villages and moving people. And so now where we are right now is over 50,000 Palestinians have been killed. Women, children, fighters, a lot of Hamas soldiers and fighters have been killed, but a lot of innocent people have died as well. And so now everybody's weighing in, including President Trump, on what should happen to the Gaza Strip. And so that's kind of where we are. Israel's trying to get back their final hostages. They're also trying to look at what do we think is the best future for us. And I think many in Israel don't think it's the Palestinians coming back to occupy Gaza. President Trump has come in and said that the U.S. wants to take over Gaza, which is almost an offensive thought to a lot of people in the Middle East, certainly a lot of Palestinians. And so over here in this country, now the students and everybody's beginning to weigh in on the justice or injustice of what's happening. I would say to you, Wade, that this is complex and there are rights and wrongs on multiple sides. And so you have to really take time to study it so that at the end of the day, we can find a way to support the innocent. There are innocent people on both sides of this that have been hurt. I love allowing the Jewish community and the Palestinian community to come together to sort of take the lead on this. So Tommie and I are not trying to be anybody's expert on this. We're learning what we can from the fringes and trying to be allies to really unity and people coming together.
I think that this is a great question, and not to stay here too long. The question around the issue in the Middle East, historically, the Middle East is not called the Middle East, right? So we have to understand how we are defining land. And so as we look at Mesopotamia or et cetera, that those lands, be it across those multiple countries in the quote unquote Middle East, had been kind of resident by certain cultures and then usurped by others. It is the same complex argument of what is America? And sometimes we are having discussions around land, around America, and there are the original land inhabitants that are not part of the conversation. So if you've traveled to Israel in the Middle East, which I have, it's very complex, such that the generations of today often do not even really know what the real issue is. Right. They're talking about the issue of the moment, today. And I'm not saying it because I was looking from the outside in. I was talking to people who are on all sides. The company I work for that was over there, in one particular location, we had 2,500, 3,000 employees, maybe 60 different ethnic groups from the quote unquote Middle East. And I was responsible for asking them, where are you from? How do you work? And how might you work better for our company? And oftentimes they would talk about the other folks, the Palestinians, the Jews, the Catholics, the Muslims, etc. And I was trying to get to the bottom. Where did this begin? It began X, right? Whatever that was.
Right.
Okay. I get it. So when we have conversations about America, we do not even include the Native Americans.
No, not even in the conversation.
Not even in the conversation. So there's cognizant dissonance between what is the main issue in the Middle East today than what the main issue was at the beginning. Right now, it's a crisis, as it has been. Peace in the Middle East from the 80s. It's peace in the Middle East in the 2025s. And so I think that bias is still showing up.
It absolutely is.
In all fronts, those who are closely related and in proximate to the situations, to us who are on the outside trying to figure it out, maybe even pontificate of, hey, they should do this, and then transition.
Right. And so I'll tell you, one of the things, Wade, that Tommie and I believe is that, and I know you believe this as well, is that God will be God in the midst of all of this. I'm not Catholic, but I am moved by the new pontiff, the new pope. He's the first American pope ever. Nobody expected that this would happen. But this particular pope out of Chicago, who also then has dual citizenship, I think in Peru, is a social justice pontiff. I mean, that's deep. And so right now, he will be one of the biggest, loudest, most influential voices in the world. And he believes that peace is the way that we have to go. And there were a lot of ways that vote could have gone. Nobody predicted that it would be this individual. He's unknown to people that have said they know all the cardinals from the United States. But he's bold. He's not afraid. He's speaking up. He's pushing back on J.D. Vance and President Trump and people around the world, because he's fighting for people and peace and love and doing the work of Christ, of Jesus Christ. And so for me, I was just powerfully moved that God is going to speak on these times and give us an opportunity in times where we are debating over truth. That's what's happening right now. We're really lost to understand truth. We have a pope who now is one of the most influential spiritual voices in the world, who is standing up for DEI, social justice, loving each other, and caring for the poor and the least among us. And I just think that's powerful.
I agree.
Let's go on. Let's pull up our categories. And then there's social biases. Those are, well, I think it's important, the conformity bias, and that's so important for people to look at. Adapting the group sort of opinion. I think there are a lot of people that have done that in this country politically. Didn't believe, but they adapted the opinion of the group. Idiosyncratic rater bias, sort of allowing personal standards. This is the one where you're good at something, and so now you want to hold everybody to that standard. I remember having teachers or hearing of teachers in college that said they never gave an A.
Yeah.
Because nobody deserves an A. I mean, how are you going to say that? Let's bring it back up, Lydia, and we'll move on to social biases. Those are the ones that we're most familiar with. The appearance bias based on gender or race or age, sort of making judgments about people. Tommie talked about the halo and horn effect. Affinity biases, favoring people like yourself. And then memory biases and perceptions are things like recency bias. Whatever I just experienced, if you work for me, Tommie, then no matter what all you did throughout the year, I'm going to judge you by whatever happened. So if you blew it on a project at the end or made a mistake, then I'm going to judge your whole year by that one mistake. Or if you landed strong and you came in great, then I'm going to judge you were poor throughout the whole year. Now I'm going to judge you on that. And then there's primacy bias, tendency to remember the first items in the list better than those in the middle, those that happen at the end.
I like this a lot, Eric. Memory and perception bias. I want to move to the self-serving bias for a moment. And the community chime in again, and those continue to like and subscribe to keep following us in the conversation. Self-serving bias. Unfortunately, I've had to engage with a few folks who did not realize that their speech, behaviors, ultimately their mindset was self-serving. And in our company, Make It Plain Consulting, it's make it plain, not make it worse.
I like that.
Not make it difficult.
That's right.
And so because it's not make it worse, not make it difficult, the mantra is to be client serving, people serving, customer serving. We serve others first, not self-serving. And so as people are self-serving, and I'm experiencing people who are self-serving that did not realize that they were, I was asking
you preaching, brother,
very specific questions around speech or behaviors. In other words, did you do this? Did you say that? And it wasn't about shaming or blaming or victimizing.
Right.
It was literally for my clarity. I wasn't going to be terribly influenced by someone else's experience with those people. So I was asking those people, is this what happened? When a person quickly pivots to gaslighting, then you know you're dealing with a self-serving person. If they're gaslighting, they are dismantling their own accountability to what has happened, to what has been said. Fortunately, There are instances where things that are said are not only verbally, but they're in written form called emails. So you just go back to the email. If a person says something that they said in the email, you tell them or ask them to go to the email, and there's no email to be said. Ooh, so you didn't really say it. So now we are kind of telling a half truth, right? So the self-serving person is in all of us.
Right.
Right.
And we're trying to monitor that. We're trying to manage that so that it doesn't become the whole of who we are.
Yeah.
So I like that. Tommie's saying that, make no mistake, every one of us has an element of that. But if that becomes the whole of who you are, if the whole of who you are is to serve yourself, then we better believe you. You're not going to all of a sudden turn to somebody that's looking out for everybody else. Let me bring up this last because we want to give you the tips.
There's an opportunity right here, Eric.
Yeah.
Mujib would like a link. This is the opportunity, Mujib, to join the show, as we always invite folks to join the show. This is a diversity conversation. We'll always be respectful and things like that. But Eric and I are not the only ones that have an opinion.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, opinion with a capital O. Right. And so, Lydia, if you can work with us here with some time, we're closing out the show shortly, but if we can get the link for Mujib to join the show, maybe even if it's not video, it may be just using his microphone, we'll do that. I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay.
Eric, to jump in.
And so we don't want to leave you hanging. We've got a closing piece on the slide around what is the solution in part. This is one. There's a study that was done at the University of Wisconsin on how do we bring down long-term bias. And so this is a long-term bias reduction strategy that has 3 steps to it. Number one, you have to increase your awareness of the inequities that people are facing. And so when you think about the Middle East and trying to avoid your own biases around that, get more information around the inequities that people are facing. When you look at folks that you may have biases against or potentially have biases against, you've got to increase your understanding of the inequity that they're facing. And then number 2, you've got to increase the empathy and concern. So it's one thing to know the data around discrimination and what it looks like. So the president says he's got an executive order called Ending Illegal Discrimination. Okay, that's cool. Right. But you got to then know what kind of discrimination is happening to people. So you're going to have to do some research around that. You're going to have to understand what people are facing. Then you've got to increase your empathy and concern about that. And then step number 3 is you ultimately have to develop structural change strategies and skilled techniques to help you bring down those biases, whether they be conscious or unconscious. So for us, thank you, Lydia, I appreciate that. So for us, we believe that this is something important for all of us to address. Tommie and I do not believe that the work that we do calls upon us to be trying to get the sort of the rock or the log out of your eye first. We're working on the one that's in ours.
Right.
And as we work on continuously trying to improve our thinking, whether it be our decision-making biases, our social biases, or our memory and perception biases, this is something that I'm working on for the rest of my life. What I have found, though, Tommie, is that, and this is a secret to people who have not attended diversity workshops. My experience is that people are longing for an opportunity to tell the truth. I just did a class this week, and people said they looked at the biases. I had 15 of them. Tommie, they looked at each other and said, "We do all of these." They said, "We do all of these biases." I mean, it was hilarious, man. They just said, "What? There's not one on here that I don't do." That's the world that we live in. When people feel that there's psychological safety, that you're not going to eject them out the seat, then they're going to tell you. This guy said, "Man, I hired this kid. He didn't fit any of the criteria that we're looking for." He said, "And I just liked him." He said, "I just liked him. He said, he reminded me like of my little brother, this and that. He said, I almost lost my job over him. Oh, I mean, this is what's happening in the world, y'all. People are just doing anything out here. And when you throw away the resume because you can't pronounce the name, that might have been the genius. When you bring in the person that make you feel comfortable and warm and fuzzy, you want to go camping with them, they might get you fired. And so we believe that there will continue to be a deep and long-standing need for somebody to help engage us in the conversation about how do we care about each other.
Yeah, that's so funny to me, Eric. That lightened the mood for me.
Right.
We have, a deep conversation here. Community's absolutely engaged, but we being humans, we just make mistakes.
Right.
Man.
Right.
I did not meet any of the criteria. Probably wasn't qualified.
Right.
The experience, this is going to be a stretch opportunity, actually the first opportunity in this space. But man, he was like my little brother. Come on, bro.
Right.
Brought him in and almost
tanked me.
Brought him into the boat, and he started drilling holes in the boat.
Right away.
Right.
Said he wasn't going to do anything but one thing. The guy came in and said, I'm only going to do this one thing. What? But we need you to do 7 things. I said, did you not ask them about the other 6 in the interview?
Can't do, won't do.
You discovered that after you hired him?
Yep.
So we got work to do. But we are delighted to be able to do the work that we do. We're grateful that you all choose to join us in this conversation. We are eager for those of you that want to be a part of the show. Tommie and I welcome you to reach out to us because we know that this conversation is not going anywhere. There's a lot of work to be done. But before you put on your shoes and your jacket to go out there and to change everybody else in the world, I would recommend that you look in the mirror and say, what is it that I can do myself? I was moved by the dream that I had last night, that what's happened in the Middle East, it involves me. It's about me. I've got to care about it. I can't just stand back and watch and say, well, that's not my thing today, because it is our thing. I think our country is being challenged. I would say that my view is that our president, in many ways, is going to unify the country going out the back door. And in many ways, he's going to unify the world, because as you begin to otherize all kinds of different communities that didn't believe that they could be otherized, then we find ourselves sort of finding common ground and a need to stand up for each other.
Yeah, I think it's a great conversation today. Again, community chiming in. Wade, you have another great question. We'll have to entertain this question on another day. And he asked, the first Afrikaners are coming to the U.S. What are our thoughts? So it's Afrikaners. This hits a sweet spot for me, Eric. And why? Because my first degree is in Africana studies. I study those who are on the African continent and diaspora, also, which are Africans, different ethnic groups. And then there are the European South Africans who are called Afrikaners. And they're migrating in numbers to the US, as those Europeans have migrated in numbers to South America, to India, to North Africa, Northeast Africa, i.e. Gaza Strip and Egypt, etc. This is in my wheelhouse of 35 years of studying social experiments and studying this type of phenomenon. We'll come back to that.
Right. Let me ask you just a quick question. Do you think that they are beginning to sense a friendlier cultural environment for them?
No, I don't think that's it. I don't think they sense a
Not here? Okay.
I don't think that is
what's strong.
The mindset of the dominant culture migrant. The dominant culture migrant just goes to a land that they want to be
and take over.
Period.
Oh.
to assume.
Okay.
There's no, I
okay.
need to feel good.
Yeah. I just thought they saw with all the stuff that we're doing right now, that is an open market for my view.
I just go to a different land.
Okay.
I can bounce around the world.
Ooh, okay. Oh, that's a whole nother level of thinking.
Oliver North said in the Iran-Contra scandal is that freedom, liberty, wealth is having food, clothing, shelter, and transportation anywhere around the world for free. That's what he said then. To go anywhere around the world, have it for free. And free is not just absent of currency.
Mm-hmm.
It's sometimes the free, the fair exchange. So I go anywhere around the world, and free for me is I have my own freedom. You'll give it to me.
Mm.
So I don't have to pay for my freedom in a new land. So the Afrikaners maybe coming to America may not have to pay. Those other folks who are coming to America are paying the price for freedom. We can talk about this later.
Thank you, Tommie.
Yep.
Thank you, Wade. Thank you, community. We love you, and we want to encourage you to go do the work, some of the work that we talked about here today. And we want to also tell you to invite somebody to join us next week as we engage in another healthy diversity conversations. Take care. Bye now.